I'm Gloria Wynn, 64, a retired nurse from Harbor Oaks, Georgia, and the week I was supposed to be healing from hip surgery turned into a battle I never expected to fight. One phone call from my daughter-in-law dropped 3 neglected children at my doorstep and changed everything. What started as forced babysitting became a rescue mission, one that taught me that family isn't just blood, it's protection, proof, and love that refuses to look away. But before we continue, please subscribe to this small channel, like, and drop your comments. Still woozy from the pain meds and inching along behind my walker, I picked up the phone and heard Sabria's voice, bright as a bell and twice as sharp. "You're at home not doing much anyway. I'm leaving the kids with you for a while. Marcus, and I need a break." The line clicked before I could get a word in. 10 days out from a hip replacement, my doctor had ordered 4 to 6 weeks of easy movement and even easier stress. My little house in Harbor Oaks, Georgia, quiet street, crepe myrtles out front, still carried the lemon sanitizer smell from the nurse who now came every other day. I was Gloria Wynn, 64, a retired registered nurse with 38 years of double shifts and emergencies behind me, a black grandmother who knew what real recovery looked like, and what it didn't. My husband, Louis, passed 2 years ago, and I was just getting comfortable with the hush of living alone. Sabria never respected quiet. At 3:05 p.m., the doorbell insisted. Through the window, I saw her marching up my walk, phone in one hand, our oldest grandchild's wrist in the other. Noelle, 13, wore a rumpled school jumper 2 sizes small. Troy, 8, had on 2 different socks and shoes that weren't speaking to each other. Maya, 5, clung to a stained plush rabbit, hair in tangles and thumb tucked tight. "Here they are," Sabria announced, sweeping inside without waiting. 2 bulging trash bags thumped onto my couch, apparently luggage. "Noelle knows how to fix snacks, so you won't have to bother much. Troy has accidents sometimes, but you still have plastic covers from when Marcus was little, right? We'll be back when we're back." "Sabria," I said, steadying myself on the walker. "I just had major surgery. Walking to the kitchen is an expedition." She rolled her eyes. "Gloria, please. Don't be dramatic. You're tired." Lip gloss, sunglasses, exit. The door shut like a gavel. 3 faces stared up at me. Noelle clutched a frayed backpack, like a shield. Troy's small hand wrapped around his sister's, protective and practiced. Maya's thumb never budged. "Well," I said, easing into my armchair. "Looks like we're roommates." Noelle's chin trembled. The tears came quiet at first, then all at once. That was when I noticed the green-yellow crescent on Troy's forearm and how all 3 of them were thinner than last Thanksgiving. The nurse in me stood up even while my body stayed seated. "Are you going to send us back?" Noelle whispered. "Come here," I said, patting the sofa. "No one's going anywhere tonight." They settled in round me like I was a lighthouse. I asked soft questions between deep breaths. When had they last eaten a hot meal? Who made sure they bathed? Who watched them when their parents went out? The answers came in pieces. Frozen waffles. Dry cereal for dinner. Laundry waiting because mom's busy with her wellness classes. Noelle did breakfasts and bedtime and everything in between. Marcus worked a lot, 55 hours most weeks, according to Noelle, and when he got home, he was tired enough to disappear standing up. I made grilled cheese and tomato soup, a Winhouse standard, and watched them eat like the bowls might vanish. Maya's shoulders dropped half an inch by the second spoonful. Troy asked for seconds with careful politeness, like someone might punish him for being hungry. Noelle finally exhaled. When the dishes were drying, I made 3 calls. First, "Renee, it's Gloria." Renee Cole had spent 3 decades as a social worker before she retired. I'd traded shifts for her more times than either of us could count back at the county hospital. "I need eyes on a situation quietly. 3 kids. Signs of neglect. Emotional harm, maybe more. Can you stop by tomorrow afternoon?" Second, "Alberta? It's Ms. Wynn next door." Alberta Qualls was 77, a black church mother with a memory like a tape recorder and eyesight better than pride allowed. "I need you to keep a notebook this week. Cars, license plates, drop-offs, pickups. Photos if you can do it discreetly. Yes, ma'am, it matters. 3rd, Marcus. Hey, baby, I said when he answered, layering my voice in sunshine. Sabria dropped the kids. We're having a lovely time. He sounded relieved, then guilty for sounding relieved. Thanks, Ma. She said you wouldn't mind. Of course, I cooed, watching Troy show Maya how to color inside the lines. You two enjoy your break. I didn't mention that Sabria had texted a beach selfie, wellness retreat in Tulum, 40 minutes after she dumped 3 children and 2 trash bags in my living room. After baths, real ones, warm water and detangling spray and clean towels, the house calmed. I set up the guest room like a little camp. 2 pallets on the floor, 1 twin bed, the nightlight shaped like a moon that used to keep Marcus company. They wanted to sleep together. I didn't argue. Safety comes before rules. By lights out, Noelle's voice was steady enough to ask, Grandma Glow, is it okay if I don't wake up early to make breakfast? It's okay if you sleep, I said. It's okay if you're 13. When the quiet finally took, I went back to the couch, pulled a legal pad onto my lap, and started a record. First impressions, bruising location and size, hair condition, clothing fit, hunger cues, speech and effect, developmental notes for Maya. I also wrote down the other thing my notes always catch, how quickly children bloom with ordinary care. At 6:20 the next morning, I heard pans clink. Noelle's voice, gentle, too grown. Troy, eat a little more. Maya, fork please. I found them in the kitchen. Noelle on tiptoe reaching a box on the top shelf. Troy feeding his sister oatmeal like it was a ritual he knew by heart. Their dishes already rinsed, their backpacks zipped. I leaned on the doorway and let them finish before I said, Noelle, we'll do this differently today. You're the kid, not the crew. She tried to smile. Mom's not a morning person. I am, I said. And if I'm not, I'll pretend to be. That afternoon, Renee arrived, small frame, gray coils, the kind of watchful that makes people tell the truth without knowing why. She spent almost 2 hours talking and drawing pictures with the kids while I rested down the hall and listened. Noelle described mornings like staffing a small cafe. Troy flinched whenever voices rose on TV. Maya hid wrappers under cushions like snacks might be confiscated. Renee came to me in the kitchen with a face I'd seen on ear doctors when a patient needed surgery now, not later. Gloria, this is deeper than weekend chaos. Noelle's been a parent since she was about 9. The little ones show chronic stress. Let me start a file, not a bomb, a parachute. We'll do this clean. Do it, I said. Quietly. That evening, the guest room turned into a lullaby. Noelle slid into honest sleep for the first time in a long time because no one needed her at dawn. Troy sprawled like boys do when they trust the dark. Maya kept her rabbit, but not her thumb. Downstairs, I opened the ledger again. Alongside the hard notes, bruises, regression, hoarding, I wrote the good. Noelle's quick laugh when praised, Troy's careful help, Maya humming to herself while I braided her hair. Children bend toward light if you give them any. I put down my pen and looked at the front door. Sabria thought I was soft. She'd forgotten that softness is a choice. By Thursday, the house was different. Breakfast was eggs, not crackers. Homework happened at my kitchen table. Maya used the bathroom like a child with confidence and regular meals. And in the afternoon quiet, I pulled out an old photo box. Marcus at 7 with a gap-toothed grin. Marcus at college, eyes bright with that I'm going somewhere look. Marcus on his wedding day, hopeful and young. I traced a picture from a winter holiday 2 years back. He looked hollowed out around the eyes in that one. In the corner, Sabria posed in a dress that cost more than a good washing machine while the kids sat careful and quiet, trying not to take up space. There, in my living room with the cicadas starting their evening choir, I made a decision. We would not repeat another season of quiet suffering. Not in my house. I dialed one more number and left a message. Mr. Lionel Pierce, this is Gloria Wynne. I'd like to ask about options for grandparents protecting minor children when parents are unavailable. Call me back. I hung up and checked the calendar. Saturday wasn't far. People who do wrong like to return on weekends when they think everyone's too relaxed to notice. I wasn't relaxed. I was ready. Mr. Lionel Pierce returned my call the next morning. Former family court prosecutor turned advocate, voice like smooth gravel. I gave him the headlines without flourishes, my surgery, the drop-off, the condition of the children, Renee's preliminary notes. Document everything, he said. Dates, times, food, sleep, school, behavior. Gather third-party eyes. Teachers. Counselors. A pediatric check. Don't confront the parents yet. If they sense a storm, they'll scatter. I don't bluff, I told him. I gathered that, Ms. Wynne. By noon, I had a list and a plan. I didn't have speed, but I had direction. Step 1, school. I called Harbor Oaks Intermediate and asked for the counselor, Mrs. Loretta Gaines, a black woman around my age who had been keeping other people's children safe since bus tokens were a thing. I'm bringing Noel and Troy in tomorrow before first bell, I said. I want eyes on them that aren't mine. Bring them, she said. We'll talk, we'll see, we'll note. Step 2, doctor. I phoned Dr. Branson, the pediatrician who'd seen my grandbabies off and on when Sabria remembered appointments. The receptionist recognized my name. Maya needs a wellness check, I said. And the older two could stand a look over. We can do Saturday morning at 8, she said. It'll be quiet. Perfect. Step 3. Proof that behaves itself. I charged the doorbell camera and pocketed a little clip-on nanny cam Renee had left in a paper bag on my porch with a note. Use only if you must. Do not argue. R. I didn't plan to argue. That evening the house rolled like an easy river. Noelle spread her homework on the table and didn't look over her shoulder every 2 minutes. Troy read his science chapter out loud, like it was a comic book. Maya sat still long enough for me to part and braid her hair into 2 neat plaits, blue ribbons to match her t-shirt. When I finished, she touched the bowl like it was treasure. Grandma Glow, Noelle said after dishes, is it okay if I just watch a show? Without doing anything? It's okay if you breathe, I said, handing her the remote. That's a job, too. While the kids laughed at a clean sitcom, I sifted through Alberta's first pages of notes slipped under my doormat. License plate numbers, timestamps, a delivery driver dropping 2 packages labeled with Sabria's name the same afternoon. She claimed she needed a break from parenting. Alberta had drawn tiny arrows for direction of travel down the street and included a list of how long porch lights stayed on at houses that weren't mine. She'd been born for this. The next morning, we were at school before the flag got raised. Mrs. Gaines invited us into her office lined with college pennants and framed photos of students grinning with diplomas. Noelle, she said gently, I'm going to ask you a few questions and you can nod or shake your head. No speeches necessary. Noelle nodded. Do you wake your siblings most mornings? Nod. Do you make their breakfast and lunches most days? Nod. Do you miss your own assignments because you're helping them? A long, reluctant nod. Mrs. Gaines glanced at me, then at Troy. Do adults at home yell a lot? Troy's eyes flicked to his sister. He lifted one shoulder. Sometimes the yelling is quiet, he said. That's the kind that sticks. We'll loop in your teachers for support, Mrs. Gaines said, pen moving. And I'm writing a mandatory report to Child Services. It won't explode your life. It will document what's been invisible. Thank you, I said, meaning it. On the way out, Noelle held my hand like she was 5 again. Saturday at 8, the pediatric office smelled like lemon cleaner and grape lollipops. Dr. Branson, tall and unhurried, listened more than she spoke. She examined bruises, measured weight, checked reflexes. She asked Maya to hop like a frog and Troy to spell his name backward, which he did with goofy triumph. Then she got quiet when she read their growth charts. They're not in crisis, she told me in the hall, voice low, but all 3 show patterns of inconsistent meals and sleep. I'll write my findings in clinical language you can use in court if it goes that way. It's going that way, I said. Back home, I made red beans and rice that perfumed the whole house. Maya napped without clenching her fist. Troy sprawled on the rug with a book he chose and no one took. Noelle asked for a second helping without apologizing. I pretended not to see the tears she blinked away. In the afternoon, my phone buzzed with a call I'd been expecting and dreading. Sabria's mother. We had never been close. Mrs. Delphine Ward loved her daughter loudly and her son-in-law quietly, and she'd kept her distance from me like it was a sport. Gloria, she said, not quite friendly, not quite hostile. Sabria sent me a photo from her wellness trip. I asked about the kids. She said they're with you. Everything all right? Come see, I said. Don't bring opinions. Just bring your eyes. She arrived in a cream suit and shoes that would have made my bunions weep. The kids were playing dominoes at the table, yelling, train, and laughing. I let her stand in the doorway and absorb it. Clean faces, neat hair, bowls in the sink, because lunch had happened when it should. Maya marched over and wrapped her arms around Delphine's knees. Children don't care about perfect. Delphine's hand trembled when she smoothed Maya's braid. She looked at me with something like apology flickering behind old pride. How long has it been like this? She asked. Long enough to build habits, I said. But not long enough to be permanent. I brought out Renee's notes and Dr. Branson's preliminary letter, laid them beside Alberta's log. I didn't add fire. I just let the paper talk. Delphine pressed her lips together. Sabria tells me everything. She started, then stopped, because grandmothers and truth have a way of meeting in the middle. Perhaps she tells me what she wants me to hear. Then hear this, I said, voice even. On Sunday afternoon, your daughter and my son will come to this house. They'll expect a quick handoff. Instead, they will find a folder, a counselor's report, a doctor's note, and 2 grandmothers who aren't going to pretend anymore. Delphine sank into a chair like a queen laying down a crown. You think they'll fight? I know they will, I said. I also know who's ready. That evening, Marcus called. His voice was softer than it had been in months. Ma, how are the kids? Full and sleeping, I said. You? A pause. I saw Sabria's posts. I didn't know she was leaving town that long. I've been working late all week. I didn't check. The sound of a man recognizing himself and not liking the reflection. Sunday, 2 o'clock, I said. Come early if you want to see what care looks like. I'll be there, he whispered, and hung up like he'd said something too big to take back. I spent Sunday morning like any battle day, quiet and methodical. Fresh sheets on the guest bed. Snacks portioned out, so little hands didn't have to ask. The manila folder on the coffee table, labeled and tabbed like I was back in Tria. Doorbell camera recording. Clip-on cam tucked on the bookshelf between my wedding photo and a ceramic angel my sister made in 7th grade. At 1:58 p.m., a car rolled into the drive. The children went still, the way kids do when history walks in. I smoothed my dress, set my shoulders, and opened the door with the same smile I used to give anxious families at the hospital. Welcome home, I said. Let's talk about what home means. The rain started right before they arrived, soft, steady, like the sky knew it needed to clear the air before what was coming. Through the front window, I watched Sabria adjust her sunglasses even though there was no sun, then grab her designer tote as Marcus stepped out of the driver's seat. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped like his own life had been one long sigh. They didn't knock. People who assume they own the room rarely do. Gloria, Sabria sang, her perfume arriving 2 seconds before she did. We're here to pick up the kids. Oh, it's so nice that you handled things while we were away. Of course, I said smoothly, motioning toward the couch. Come sit. They're just in the backyard. Marcus hovered near the door, uneasy. I caught his eyes, gave a small nod. They're fine, I said. Better than fine. He looked relieved. She looked bored. You know, I began, setting 2 mugs of coffee down. It's been enlightening having the children here. Noelle is quite the little adult. She wakes up early, cooks, cleans, makes lunches, practically runs the house. Sabria gave a shallow laugh. She's responsible. Always has been. I said, drawing the folder closer. But don't you think it's odd? She's 13, and she's been doing it all since, what, 9? Marcus blinked. Since 9? Sabria's phone froze mid-scroll. What are you implying, Gloria? I opened the folder. That those 3 kids have been raising themselves while you've been living like a single influencer. Her voice hardened. How dare you? Easily, I said. Because I have proof. She scoffed until she saw the photos. Renee's documentation lay in plain view. Troy's bruises, Maya's neglected hair, Noelle's malnourished frame. Medical notes, timestamps, signatures. I'd highlighted nothing. Truth didn't need neon. Marcus's face drained of color. What is this? It's what your children looked like when they arrived at my house, I said evenly. And what they said when we asked the right questions. Sabria shot to her feet. You had them interrogated? I had them heard. I corrected. Something their mother hasn't done in years. She snatched up one photo and tore it clean in half. You can't just. I can, I said, voice cutting through hers like a blade. And I already did. The originals are with my attorney. Marcus rubbed his forehead. Mom, please tell me this is some misunderstanding. Look at your daughter, I said, pointing through the kitchen window where Noelle was helping Maya zip her jacket while Troy kicked a ball in the grass. That little girl has been the parent in your house. And you've both let it happen. Sabria's mouth twisted. You think you're better than us just because you are a nurse? You're lonely, Gloria. You need attention, so you're making up abuse to feel important. Before I could reply, the door opened. Delphine Ward stepped inside, face grim, umbrella dripping on the rug. I told you this was coming, Sabria, she said quietly. I saw the photos. I saw those children. Stop pretending. Sabria's expression cracked. Mama? You're taking her side? I'm taking my grandchildren's side, Delphine said, voice steel beneath sorrow. Marcus sank into the couch, covering his face. I didn't know, he whispered. You didn't look, I said. And that's worse. The air hung heavy until the sound of the back door broke it. The children had come in, wet shoes, bright eyes, unaware of the storm brewing in the living room. Daddy, Maya squealed, running to him. He hugged her like a drowning man clutching driftwood. But Noelle stood behind her siblings, wary, measuring the room. She looked at me, silently asking if she should stay or run. It's all right, baby, I said softly. You're safe. Sabria snapped. We're leaving. All of you have lost your minds. No, you're not, I said, rising slowly, the ache in my hip nothing compared to the weight of what I'd carried all week. Because this, I tapped the folder, is now a legal matter. Marcus frowned. Legal? I've filed for temporary guardianship, citing neglect and emotional harm. The case hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. Sabria's jaw dropped. You can't do that. I already did, I said. With corroboration from a licensed social worker, a pediatrician, a school counselor, and your own mother's statement. The silence after that was pure thunder. Then Sabria screamed. First words, then fury, then insults that didn't touch me. Marcus sat frozen, his hand still on Maya's back. The children watched from the hallway, wide-eyed but strangely calm. They'd seen worse. Delphine stepped between us. Sabria, stop it. You've lost control, and if you keep talking, you'll lose much more. Sabria spun on her. You've always hated me. No, Delphine said quietly. I've just finally stopped excusing you. I moved to the doorway, steady on my walker but firm in my stance. You can both yell all you want, but understand this. Those children will not spend another night under your roof until a judge decides they're safe. And I'll be there in that courtroom with every report and witness ready. Marcus lifted his head, voice barely above a whisper. Mom, can I see them tomorrow? Just me. Yes, I said, meeting his eyes. But you come alone. Sabria's voice trembled, a mix of rage and panic. You think you've won, old woman? This isn't about winning, I said. It's about rescuing. When they finally left, her storming to the car, him walking behind like a shadow that had learned it was still human, the house exhaled. Noelle came to me, lip quivering. Grandma Glow, are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, I said, pulling her close. You're in recovery. And in that moment, I knew what came next wasn't just a hearing. It was a reckoning years in the making. The courthouse in Clayton County was older than justice itself, beige brick, humming fluorescents, and a chill that made even truth shiver. I sat near the front with Renee, who carried her neat folder of reports like a weapon she'd sharpened for decades. On my left, Delphine Ward clasped her purse tight, silent but steady. Across the aisle, Sabria looked like she'd dressed for a photo shoot, not a custody hearing, sharp suit, perfect curls, expression rehearsed. Marcus sat beside her, hands clasped, eyes lowered, the ring finger on his left hand bare. The judge entered, Honorable Miriam Brooks, a black woman in her late 50s, no-nonsense and famously allergic to excuses. This is case 304, CN, she said, flipping through the file. Petition for emergency guardianship by Ms. Gloria Wynn concerning minors Noel Wynn, Troy Wynn, and Maya Wynn. Her gaze moved from the paper to the people. Ms. Wynn, you may begin. I stood slowly, leaning on my cane. My hip protested, but my resolve did not. Your Honor, 1 week ago, my daughter-in-law left 3 children with me after I'd had surgery, claiming she needed a break. I expected babysitting. What I found was neglect, physical, emotional, and educational. I've documented it all, with professional verification. Sabria rolled her eyes. Her attorney, a slick man named Barton Hale, rose. Your Honor, my client merely sought temporary assistance from her mother-in-law. Mrs. Wynn has exaggerated ordinary family issues into melodrama. These children are healthy and loved. The judge held up a hand. We'll see about that. Ms. Renee Cole, please take the stand. Renee walked forward with that quiet confidence that made liars nervous. Under oath, she laid out her findings. Photographs, interviews, developmental notes. Her voice was clinical, but her eyes burned. In my 30 years as a social worker, she said, I've rarely encountered a 13-year-old acting as a full-time parent to siblings 8 and 5. The emotional labor this child carries is evidence of parentification, which is a clear indicator of neglect. Sabria whispered harshly to her lawyer. Renee didn't even glance her way. The judge nodded. And your professional opinion? These children require immediate stability and sustained adult care. Ms. Wynn provides both. Next came Dr. Branson. Her testimony was surgical. All 3 minors show patterns consistent with nutritional inconsistency and sleep disruption. Their conditions improved markedly after 1 week in Ms. Wynn's care. Objection. Barton snapped. Correlation is not causation. The judge raised an eyebrow. Sit down, counselor. You're not in a science fair. A few muffled chuckles echoed through the courtroom. Even Marcus's lips twitched. Then it was Sabria's turn. She stood tall, all charm and poise, voice trembling just enough to sound like a victim. Your Honor, I'm a devoted mother. I admit things have been stressful. My husband works long hours, and I've been managing alone. Sometimes I take time for self-care. But I would never neglect my children. This is all a misunderstanding blown out of proportion by someone who doesn't like me. Judge Brooks tilted her head. And how often do you manage alone, Mrs. Ward? Maybe 3, for nights a week. Sometimes I have to recharge. I have an online wellness business that requires travel. Renee scribbled a note. I didn't need to look. She was writing recharge equals abandon. The judge leaned forward. Who watches your children when you recharge? Sabria hesitated. My oldest helps. She's mature for her age. Your oldest is 13, the judge said flatly. That's not maturity. That's desperation. The silence that followed was heavy enough to make air visible. Then, unexpectedly, Marcus stood. His voice shook but carried across the room. Your Honor, I've been blind. I thought working non-stop meant providing. I didn't see what it cost my kids. I failed them, but I want to fix it. I've filed for divorce, and I'm asking for shared custody with my mother until I can prove I'm fit. Sabria's face snapped toward him like glass cracking. You traitor, she hissed. Mr. Hale, Judge Brooks said dryly, control your client before I have security do it. Sabria slumped back, muttering under her breath. The judge turned to me. Ms. Wynn, if granted guardianship, how do you plan to care for these children long-term? I smiled faintly. Your Honor, I've spent almost 4 decades nursing the sick and raising the weary. I may walk slow, but I still stand tall. These children don't need perfection. They need peace, meals, rules, and someone who looks them in the eye when they talk. That I can do. The judge scribbled a note, lips pressed but not unkind. Bring in the children, she said. A bailiff opened the side door, and in came Noel, Troy, and Maya, clean, neat, holding hands. The entire room softened a notch. Judge Brooks smiled gently. Hi there. You must be Noel. Yes, ma'am. Can you tell me who helps you get ready for school? Noel's voice was small but steady. I do. I help Troy and Maya, too. And who makes dinner? Sometimes me. Sometimes Grandma Glow. She lets us help. The judge nodded, glancing at Sabria. Thank you, sweetheart. You can sit. Maya toddled to me and crawled onto my lap like the world's smallest witness. After a long pause, Judge Brooks closed the file and looked over the room. This is not complicated, she said. This is a story I've seen too many times. A child becomes the adult because the adults are chasing something else. She tapped the folder. The court grants temporary guardianship to Ms. Gloria Wynne and Mr. Marcus Wynne, with sole physical custody resting with Ms. Wynne until further review. Mrs. Sabria Ward will have supervised visitation pending completion of parenting classes and psychological evaluation. Sabria shot to her feet. You can't take my babies. They were never yours to take, the judge replied evenly. They were yours to love. The gavel hit wood, and just like that the storm broke. Sabria screamed. Security escorted her out, and the echo of her fury followed us down the courthouse hall. But the kids? They only wanted ice cream. That evening, back home, Noel fell asleep on the couch halfway through a movie. Troy leaned against my leg. Maya snored on my shoulder. Marcus stood in the doorway, eyes wet. I should have protected them, he whispered. You will, I said. Starting now. He nodded, and for the first time in years, I believed him. 6 months later, my little house on Harbor Oaks Lane didn't sound like a recovery ward anymore. It sounded like a home. Laughter through the halls, school shoes by the door, cartoon songs bleeding out from the living room. The same walls that once echoed my loneliness now hummed with life. Noelle had just turned 14, and for the first time since she could remember, she got to act her age. She joined the debate club, came home arguing about justice and fairness with the confidence of someone who'd finally seen both. Troy, now 9, played shortstop for the local youth baseball team, every game muddy, loud, and glorious. And little Maya had started kindergarten, proud of her new backpack and her ability to write her name in wobbly letters across every surface she found. Every Sunday evening, Marcus came for dinner, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just with stories about how he was learning to parent in real time. He'd moved into an apartment 10 minutes away and spent every spare moment with his children. The exhaustion that used to hang from his shoulders had melted into purpose. Mom, he said one night, watching Noelle teach Troy how to fold paper airplanes, I don't think I've ever really seen them before. I worked, I provided, but I never looked. You're looking now, I said, smiling. That's what matters. Sabria had tried to fight the court order at first, loudly, publicly, dramatically. She'd called me names on social media, claimed I'd brainwashed her children. The videos didn't last long. Her own mother, Delphine, stepped in and pulled the plug. You're only embarrassing yourself, she told her. And she was right. The court extended my guardianship after Sabria failed to attend her first 2 parenting sessions. Eventually, she left town, chasing the same kind of freedom that had always cost her too much. We hadn't heard from her since, except for one letter, a thin envelope postmarked Las Vegas, written in her sharp, beautiful handwriting. Maybe I wasn't meant to be a mother. Maybe I just wanted to be someone else. Take care of them for me. You always wanted to anyway. I read it once and filed it away. Some wounds heal best when they're left closed. Our mornings became a rhythm I could measure my days by. Noelle cooked breakfast, but now because she wanted to, not because she had to. Troy set the table, humming the same tune every morning like a ritual. Maya practiced spelling everyone's names in syrup on her pancakes. After the school drop-off, the house fell silent again, but it wasn't empty silence anymore. It was peace. I filled the hours with volunteering at the local community clinic, using my nursing license in small ways that mattered. Sometimes I'd bring Maya with me in the afternoons, and the staff would smile at her questions about how grandmas fix people. One gray Thursday, I heard a knock I didn't expect. When I opened the door, Marcus was there, and behind him stood Delphine. "Thought we'd drop by," she said softly. "I wanted to see how they're doing." The children tackled her legs before I could answer. Delphine, the woman who had once defended her daughter out of habit, bent down and cried right there on my porch. "You gave them back their childhood," she whispered to me, "and I'll never stop thanking you for that." I squeezed her hand. "Then help me keep it that way." From that day forward, Delphine became part of the circle, not a rival grandmother, but an ally. She came to Maya's school plays, brought Troy baseball gloves, taught Noelle how to sew a button. We'd come full circle, two women who'd once stood on opposite sides now standing together in the same kitchen, baking cornbread and sharing stories about how mistakes can become missions. Every night, after the kids were in bed, I'd sit by the window with my cup of tea and think about how it all started. One phone call, one act of selfishness, one grandmother too stubborn to let children disappear into neglect. Sometimes, peace doesn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it comes with paperwork, courtrooms, and sleepless nights. But when it finally settles, it changes everything. Last week, Noelle came to me holding a school essay. "We had to write about someone who saved our lives," she said shyly. I braced myself for tears before I even unfolded the paper. "My grandma Glow saved mine," it began. "Not just because she gave us food or clothes, but because she reminded us what love feels like when it's safe." I didn't finish reading. I didn't have to. If you've stayed with me through this story, thank you. I'm Gloria Wynne, and this was the hardest, holiest battle of my life. I didn't win a war. I built a home. Sometimes, justice doesn't look like punishment. It looks like bedtime stories, hot meals, and children who laugh without checking if it's allowed. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done? Would you have fought the storm or waited for it to pass? Drop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you believe in second chances, and remember, some victories aren't loud. They sound like 3 children sleeping through the night, finally safe.